Hello, everyone, and welcome to the OGA podcast. We've been doing a few episodes throughout the year here, and Rob and I, we actually haven't really sat down and had a geoengineering podcast, just the two of us, for a while. So, those of you who are not familiar with the both of us, I'm Paul Bean. I'm the OGA digital publisher. I produce our Substack. I run our social media, and now I'm taking over the podcast. Rob is he's been doing it, and we've kind of been doing it together. We've done some streaming, but as we entered into the new year, we want to do another episode, and just we're kind of going into the fall, I should say, and we have some interesting things going on. But anyway, let's just get right into it. Rob, how's it going?
Paul, it's going really well. I'm in New Mexico at the moment, and it is a beautiful, natural, clear blue sky day. We're making clouds real again, Paul. We are making skies blue again. Unlike yesterday, traveling across western New Mexico, there was so much geoengineering activity in the skies overhead. It was tough to stomach out here in the desert. But today is a beautiful day, and on we flow.
Well, it's interesting. I've only been to New Mexico one time, and when I was there, it was geoengineered skies. Absolutely, it was like, man, I kind of remember thinking, I don't think I've ever seen it somewhere where it was so visible. Because it's a place where it's so dry.
Right, right, and the New Mexico landscape and skyscape is so vast and open and impressive. You can see in all directions, 360 degrees, particularly when you're out of the city. So you really notice when things go south in terms of geoengineering. And I should say, um, because I'm in New Mexico, a shout out to the now retired geoengineering researcher Clifford Carnicombe
Yep.
of Santa Fe, whose work at the Carnicom Institute has really pioneered so much of our work and the work of our colleagues. Alana Freeland, who's written 4 books about geoengineering, was introduced in part to geoengineering through Clifford Carnicombe's work. So it feels like I'm coming full circle today, Paul, to be back in New Mexico and having this conversation with you.
Yeah, well, I think it's an interesting time to be involved in this kind of little niche world within the environmentalist community. I think there's more conversation being had about it than ever before. Particularly like even yourself, Rob. You've been on a handful of podcasts. You were most recently one of the bigger ones you've been on was the Way Forward with Alex Zeck, which is he has a great platform. And I also know, Rob, you've been kind of making the tour a little bit right now. You were last weekend, you were at Salt Lake City, and you're at the Weston A. Price Wise Traditions Conference. Talk to me a little bit about those things. I know I just threw a couple things at you, but
Sure. Well, first of all, yes, thanks to all of the podcasters who've, I would say, had the courage to have conversations about weather manipulation and climate modification, about geoengineering. For many years, Paul, as you know full well, our environmental research, our climate change research has been branded suspect. It's been, conspiratorial, which of course is ridiculous given the 130-ish year history of geoengineering, 130 years or so. So shout out to Alec and to Benjamin and Michael at Terrain Theory, to Philly J. Lay at The Way Forward in the UK, to Dan Aston Gregory
yeah.
at his podcast. And who would have thought, Paul, 1 year ago that OGA's work would be suddenly moving into mainstream environmental conversations? But for that, we can celebrate. So yes, I was at Weston A. Price national conference in Salt Lake City last weekend to support our dear friend and documentary filmmaker Ariana Victor, who is about to release a brand new film called Just Look Up: Uncovering the Elephant in the Sky, which will drop officially on December 5th on platforms, streaming platforms everywhere. So I attended the screening of Just Look Up on Friday night at Weston A to a packed house. The film is still in editing, so there's still a number of post production elements that need to be finalized. But let me just say, Paul, the film is fantastic. Ariana does a really remarkable job of taking us on both kind of her own personal journey to uncovering the elephant of geoengineering, but also brings in a number of very remarkable professionals to speak to geoengineering, including many of our colleagues, Paul.
Yeah.
James Herndon, our nuclear geochemist, Dr. Herndon, for starters, is in the film. Alana Freeland is in the film. Nikki Florio is in the film. Greg Braden, who I happened to run into yesterday here in New Mexico, completely randomly.
Wow.
Yeah, at Acoma Sky City. Um, yeah, is in the film. So shout out to Ariana. It's been a 5-year labor of love. She approached us, gosh, I don't know, probably 4 years ago now with the original 90 slide pitch deck for a film about geoengineering, Paul, and to see the result almost 5 years later, it's incredibly exciting. And as I said to Ariana yesterday on the phone, you're going to have a very busy year next year.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I have to imagine for her the making of that film over the last 5 years, going from what you just said, slides to what you saw, it had to evolve a lot over time, throughout her conversations. Maybe she had a vision for how it was going to be. And then to be going into this time now where, yeah, we're allowed to talk about this conversation. We're allowed to explore it. We're allowed to, view a documentary about it and show. So where is she at with it? Where is she at with, so like, what are her thoughts?
Yeah, well, let me correct, not correct, but let me piggyback on that. So we are allowed to talk about whatever we want, Paul.
Sure. Oh, I know.
No, but I just want to clarify. I think just to reframe that a little bit, the for lack of a better term, the corporate media industrial complex, the apparatus that is our national imperial communication system, disallowed respectable conversation about weather manipulation and climate modification until very recently. For reasons I think you and I are both kind of unclear about. Like, why is it, Paul, so suddenly this
Yeah.
year, 2025, we were allowed,
Yeah.
rather, mainstream media allowed or permitted more open, I would say, conversation about geoengineering when in years past, Paul, we have lost entire channels on platforms like YouTube for having Alphabet Google YouTube, to be clear, for having these conversations about weather manipulation and climate modification. So I just want to reframe that. We have held this space for 8 years at OGA, and it is of course gratifying to see us being emerging into more mainstream conversations, and it's still unclear as to why that is. So to answer your question, so I think Ariana is feeling very excited about the film. She's currently, between now and December 5th, when the film premieres, doing a tremendous amount of post-production work on the film. That's her main focus. She's invited OGA to contribute a curriculum guide for the film as part of her activities packet, if you will, supporting materials to go along with the film. So that's something that I'll be working on the next month or so. And it was interesting, Paul, being in Utah and sitting at the exhibit table with Ariana, listening to people come up and talk with her about their reactions to the film. I think there are a lot of homeschoolers within Weston A. Price. I think there's a lot of excitement about the film being used as a resource for homeschoolers of all ages. That's cool.
Yeah.
There was also, interestingly, a number of families in the room who lost their homes to so-called wildfires over the course of the past couple of years. And I think it was very powerful for them to witness the film because Ariana's springboard into this story is her own experience growing up in California and watching her community burn in
Yeah.
these so-called wildfires back in 2017. So that was her jumping off point for this movie, as you'll see when you watch the film. And it was really powerful to kind of bear witness to these other families who are like, yeah, we're just happy to be here after what went down went down. So all
That's
that,
really interesting. It's just interesting because, Rob, as you know, being in Vermont for the last few years, you do have conversations with people about geoengineering and the effects on uh, locally, potentially, what would some of us think, these floods that we've had, now we're experiencing a bit of a drought. And, when I went to the UK, I was thinking the same thing, like just how interesting it was to talk to people from elsewhere about their experiences with this phenomena, which really does kind of bring home the point that this is a global issue. It's a global problem. From UK to Salt Lake to have people now noticing and families and people actually talking about it. I think that's incredible. But I want to go back to something that we were talking about, and I think I'm so excited to see that film. I'm looking forward to it. And any way I can help, Rob, by the way, with putting together the curriculum, let me know. That would be great. Uh,
boy, you'll be the first to see it when I draft it, Paul. And yeah,
okay.
and Ian Baldwin. Shout out to
Yes. Yeah.
our
Shout out to Ian. Yes, definitely.
our patriarch, Ian Baldwin.
Yes. Yes. Brave patriarch, Ian.
Yeah,
But you said, I say aloud, and it is great that we are now, yeah, allowed to talk about it. We've always been allowed to talk about it. You're right. We've been talking about it for all this time anyway, and people have for a lot longer. But why now? I think it's so relevant, especially today, because I'm pretty sure you haven't seen this. I don't know, maybe you did, but Donald Trump posted today on his Truth Social. I guess I should say it was last evening. That video of Lee Zeldin talking about how they're gonna, the EPA is gonna release everything they have on geoengineering and contrails, right? They use the phrase contrails. Um, and I have to wonder if it's a response to this letter that the state senator from Pennsylvania wrote. Thomas Massey also, forwarded the message a little bit. Um, but the question is again, why now? And we also see, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey both kind of claiming that because of this government shutdown, uh, geoengineering isn't happening. So again, I know I just threw a lot at you, Rob, but why now? What
yeah,
what what do you think?
yeah. Well, to answer your last point first, geoengineering is still happening. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah,
you and I discussed this week. We're hearing from Americans all over the United States who are seeing activity in the skies every day, despite the government shutdown. So, yeah, I mean, I wish Representative Massey were correct, but I don't think so in this instance. But why now? Um, so, our take, as you know, Paul, at OGA has always been that geoengineering is a dual use initiative, both civilian and military. And much of geoengineering activity flies under the radar as relatively secretive military experimentation with weather manipulation and climate modification. And by the way, cloud seeding is a convenient cover for these much deeper geoengineering activities that involve electromagnetic frequency technologies, NextRads, Doppler radar stations, research, to the tune of billions of dollars into weather research. And the word research is a Orwellian term for we're going to do shit. Sorry, we're going to do stuff with the weather in the guise of research
sure.
and not tell you. So why now? I think there's an attempt to legitimize in public discussion elements of these geoengineering initiatives, starting with cloud seeding, which is an old technology. It's been around 120 years, 130 years. Witness Mr. DeRico of Rainmaker being paraded around the media to talk about cloud seeding ad nauseum.
Yeah,
Marjorie Taylor Greene in Congress, her primary focus in testimony was cloud seeding. And there's so much more to geoengineering than simply ejecting silver iodide or silver nitrate into the sky to create clouds to make it rain. That, again, that is old technology, widely accepted and underway in almost all 50 states since the 1930s and 40s. What's more curious, Paul, is these more secretive military applications of geoengineering, which, as good pattern recognizers at OGA, we're seeing elements of in these so-called wildfires in California, in Canada, in the so-called wildfire that consumed Lahaina, west coast of Maui, where I used to live, by the way, for a couple of years, and I'm well familiar with that town.
Yeah.
In Hurricane Helene and the Carolinas, in the steering of atmospheric rivers, which interestingly is a new term we're hearing more and more
Yes.
in the weather reports over the past few months. That was never a term that was used in American weather and meteorology. It has ancient origins, atmospheric rivers. The ancient Chinese spoke of this, but yeah, so it's all very curious. And I think, to answer the question square, I think we're seeing more public conversation about geoengineering as a way to kind of frame up the guardrails of acceptable public conversation. Like, it's okay to talk about cloud seeding. It's okay to talk about, certain elements of geoengineering.
Solar radiation management.
Exactly. And always, again, in the what we call the passive future tense, Paul. Well, if someday we were to have to block the catastrophic effects of climate change and global warming, we might have to do some of these geoengineering projects to dim the sun, brighten the clouds, etc.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's exactly what's going on. Dorico is the prime example for sure, and you got to give him credit to some extent. As an entrepreneur, I think when I watch him, I think he's pretty genuinely believing things, and I think he really believes in what he's doing. He's not much older than me, and I think he's just very actually might be a year younger than me now that I think of it. But I think he believes what he's doing. And that's, of course, like exploded the conversation on cloud seeding specifically. But no, yes.
We're like on a first name basis, you and Augustus.
Yeah, we are. I've gotten to know him okay, but
Yeah.
anyone out there who's like, oh wow, what are you developing a relationship with this guy? Like, it's not necessarily very cushy. A lot of the stuff sent back and forth is like, for me, it's and from him as well, a little bit of jabs here and there. Like, he knows I don't like what he does. Like, I'm very, very blatant about it.
Hey, and if he's listening, I'd love to see you two have a conversation on our
Yes, that's going to happen. We're working on that. He's busy, man. He's busy seeding the clouds, bro. He's busy.
He sure is, and talking about it on TV.
Well, he seems to be a lot busier talking about it on TV than he is anything else, which I think is probably the most interesting part. If I get him on, I'm not gonna beat him up. I'm gonna give him a shot, but
have the conversation.
Just have the conversation. He's a nice young man, but I can't say much more than that, because if I do, people are gonna be like, he killed the people in Texas in the floods. So you have to be a little bit cognizant of this. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the letter from the PA senator to President Trump and then Thomas Massie. I mean, hey, I think that's the first time we're seeing military being explicitly named as a potential culprit, if that's maybe the right word. I don't know if that's the right word, but what do you think of that, Rob?
Yeah, and maybe it would be helpful for you just to give a little bit more explanation here for folks listening. And
absolutely. Okay, so we have a state senator named Doug Mastriano who sent a letter to President Trump. He's a state senator from Pennsylvania. And basically, here's what the letter says. It says, I respectfully urge executive action to terminate all federal funding and contracting and operational support associated with solar radiation modification, SRM, activities conducted by the Department of War, DARPA, NOAA, and other federal agencies. And it goes on to say more things. And Massey said, I support this letter to President Trump. Terminate all federal funding and operational support associated with solar radiation management, SRM, activities conducted by the Department of War, DARPA, NOAA, and other federal agencies. So, Rob, what do you think?
I think it's fantastic. The more pushback we can bring to these secretive geoengineering programs being done by military actors, the better. And that could be at the federal level. We know, and who would have thought, Paul, a year ago that we'd see dozens of individual states within the United States introducing various pieces of legislation, some of them more effective than others, to challenge geoengineering in the skies over our citizenry. It's fantastic. At the local level, right? Also, pushback right down to, and I'm a breath coach, so you'll appreciate this, relearning how to breathe properly, shutting our mouth into our nose so we reduce the fear and the anxiety that many of us feel when we look up and realize what's going on up there, especially for the first time. It's a bit overwhelming. So, fantastic letter.
Yeah.
I really hope that at all levels, federal, state, local, individual, sovereign, more and more humans, Team Human, American citizens will continue to bring their energy to bear on making clouds real again.
Rob, I love it. I think one of my favorite things that I've heard you talk about specifically with talking about breath work, with Alex Zek, which I can't. I think that was. I think so many people have said this. That was one of the coolest conversations that they've ever listened to, and that really is the truth, because you make this point where if we're really going to solve this issue, it really does come back to conscious and strategic breathing, and really humanity itself taking a hard look at itself and saying, wait a minute, what are we contributing to? What are we part of? And are there things that we can actually do to say, hey, we don't consent to this. We don't agree with this. Again, the individuals one by one coming out and making that point. And I think it's just it's so funny to think about where it comes from with you is from the perspective of breath, which I think is probably another thing about OGA that kind of separates us in terms of a geoengineering organization, is that we're looking at it again, person by person. So I just, what do you think of that, Rob?
Yeah, so well said, Paul. The quantum physicists are just figuring out, Paul, what the mystics have known for a very long time. Each of us as humans co-create our reality breath by breath, moment by moment, in flow with the rest of living and breathing creation. So, to some extent, Paul, we actually, each of us, can steer the weather
Yeah.
with the power of our breath. Now, that may sound odd at first, but no. As we learn how to breathe optimally, more consciously, more strategically, more mindfully, we actually begin to influence energetically and biochemically the world around us. And Alec and I spoke on the way forward a little bit about the power of intention. And when you get groups of humans together practicing the power of intention, miraculous things begin to happen. So it really is, I think, the foundational starting place for confronting, let's say, the elephant in the sky, to use Ariana Victor's subtitle of Just Look Up. We begin with taking ownership of our own health, our own wellness, and our power, our superpower that each of us have to influence our immediate surroundings in conversation with these beautiful trees and plants and shrubs. And I've got a couple of dogs here spending some time with me this morning, the birds, and we're all having this conversation.
Yeah.
I think humans have sort of forgotten that we can enjoy not one miracle a day, but 20,000 breaths, 20,000 miracles a day, and really, really drop into that conscious awareness of the power we have to shape reality.
Yeah, well, I think we've forgotten it. Really, it's funny having these conversations too with Ian Baldwin, another member of our team, a co-founder of OGA. Um, it really is since the dawn of in the end of World War II. It feels like in some ways, and maybe it's beyond this. Maybe it's a deeper human issue, but specifically with the technology of geoengineering and weather modification, it's kind of birthed out of that era, and now in today's society in which we're living. And it's interesting too how I find it that a lot of people that do get into geoengineering and weather modification as a study, like what is going on in our skies, right? Often it draws so many people into a spiritual and esoteric place for whatever reason, and I think it is because of that kind of we talked about the experience that Ariana Victor had and how like kind of like was a formidable experience in the sense where she's like, man, this kind of shaped the way that I view things. But you end up kind of like turning to God, I guess, in some ways it's saying, how could this be? And do you know what I'm saying, Rob? Would you?
Nature is our best teacher, Paul.
Yeah.
And we are, all of us, inspired by nature. And what that means, quite literally, is nature is breathing good energy into us every moment, every breath of every day. And all we have to do as humans is open ourselves up again to that inspiring conversation between each of us, the natural world through which we move, and one another. So many geoengineering researchers, I think, especially when they first discover what's going on up here, they immediately drop into a place of fear,
Yes.
understandably, right? Because to reckon with the 130-year history of weather manipulation and climate modification is to acknowledge that humans have been trifling with the most elemental forces on Earth, right? Air, water, fire, earth.
Yeah.
But to move from fear into optimism, hope, and the power to co create our reality is really where we want to take people. And of course, legislation matters. Of course, public conversation matters. Of course, films like Just Look Up, Uncovering the Elephant in the Sky, Ariana's film, matter. Of course, orgone busting devices matter. Of course, putting copper piping in your gardens to increase your plant growth in the face of chemicals raining down from above via geoengineering matters. All of that, incredibly important. And it begins with the power each of us have to take the weather with us, to shape the weather around us. There's a great Crowded House song, Everywhere You Go, Always Take the Weather with You. I don't know if you know that song.
No, I haven't. I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to look it up. Take the weather with you.
there's a line in there, Julius Caesar and the Roman Empire couldn't conquer the blue sky.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Crowded House, Weather with You.
That's
It should
awesome.
become our anthem, actually.
Actually, I think you're right. Or yeah, definitely. I'll have to look it up. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
You mentioned this word fear too, which I find it's a very it's an unfortunate word, but it always seems to be when I do listen to the advocates for things like cloud seeding or even geoengineering as a weapon, as a weather weapon, right? It's always kind of like this. Well, if we don't do it, then China's going to do it, and China has a really good cloud seeding program, man, and they're out competing us. And if we don't keep up with what China's doing, right? So we're making these decisions out of fear, and if you're starting to see this kind of decision making be unveiled and why they do the things that they do, but we're only seeing a very small fraction of it, right? In these justifications. So one does have to wonder, um, if there are threats out there of other nations and countries and other people, and this is something that Augustus and I, when we debated, I think I made the point like, well, the only time that maybe it could ever be justified using weather modification is if like the United States is directly under attack in some form, or people are under attack in some form, and we would have to stop it. And I did some thinking on that, and I know why that doesn't make any sense now, Rob. But maybe what do you think of that kind
There
of
will,
notion?
yes, there will always be geopolitical arguments, rationales for engaging in extreme environmental activities like geoengineering. To the extent that we humans as a species care about our own survival, uh, the survival and thriving of the natural world through which we move and which we are a part of, we have an obligation as instinctual creatures, we humans, to really push back on those kinds of geopolitical and imperial arguments. We're seeing the same conversation unfold with artificial intelligence. Well, if we don't do it, the Chinese will do it, right? Failing to recognize that at the very highest levels of corporate and state craft, there's a very small group of players who are having their way with, or trying to have their way with, the rest of us and nature herself. So it's our obligation to work on defending the skies above us,
Yeah,
the earth beneath us, the oceans through which we move and have our being. And so has it always been, Paul. This
yeah,
isn't this is an ancient human story.
yeah. And I also, those all the points that you made. It is like, what are we justifying, right? We're really going to justify this for any reason? Like, wait a second here, this is crazy. And then I had the thought too during the debate right after I said it, I was like, well, the people of the United States are constantly being attacked with weather weapons and weather modification, and nobody's doing anything to stop it. So why should it ever be justified, basically, right? I mean, at least that's kind of what we theorize. By the way, beautiful blue sky behind you.
I've been enjoying the clouds slowly dissipating.
It's pretty cool. Um, Speaking of weather as a weapon, um, I was listening to Peggy Hall. The what is she? What is her show called? Rob,
The healthy American.
the Healthy American. I was listening to her earlier today, and she was talking about, and I just kind of wanted to maybe finish the show on this topic, because Vermont has been experiencing a drought for the last, I don't know, maybe 2.5 months. And prior to this drought, we had a very wet spring and summer, at least early summer. And for the last 3 years in a row, of course, we've talked about this a bunch. It's flooded here in Vermont, 3 years in a row, July 11th, same exact day. Uh, One of the things she's talking about, the Healthy American, Peggy Hall, she's saying that hurricanes have stopped. And here we are, we're kind of like in the middle of hurricane season. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Rob, but she kind of isn't wrong. What do you make of this weather report from her? What do you think?
So she started that episode a day or two ago with an article highlighting a spring 2025 report from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA,
Yes.
predicting last spring that we would see excessive hurricanes this fall. It would be a particularly dramatic hurricane season. Now, that has not come to pass, at least as of yet. And so there's a lot of speculation, and it's tied into the government shutdown,
Got it.
allegedly, stopping geoengineering for a while, which I don't think is accurate.
Me neither.
Yeah, but there's a lot of speculation about, yeah, so why aren't there as many hurricanes this autumn as NOAA predicted in the spring? And I have a couple of thoughts about that. And this is a great place to end. Yeah. So, first of all, NOAA is in the business of collaborating on weather manipulation,
Of course.
climate modification, under the guise of research, weather research. And it's really important for people to understand when they hear the word research coming out of the mouth of these federal agencies tasked with researching the weather. What these agencies are telegraphing in code is we're manipulating the weather in the
Yeah.
guise of research. So
Yeah.
that's the first thing. The second thing is when people ask, well, did cloud seeding kill those people in Texas or the people in Lahaina or whatever? Whether or not that's actually what happened, humans possess the technologies to do that. So weather manipulation and climate modification are real. These are ongoing projects, and we must factor into any conversation about natural disasters, wildfires, climate change. We must factor in the power we have with these technologies, we, military mostly, to affect weather and climate outcomes. And that is not yet happening, particularly in the global environmentalist community, which tends to pin everything on so-called greenhouse gases, which isn't necessarily wrong, but it's a very simplistic way of looking at complex phenomena. If humans possess technologies to manipulate the weather and modify the climate, which we do and have been doing for decades, we must factor into our perception, our understanding of what's going on out here, these technologies, and not just cloud seeding again, but electromagnetic frequency technologies that seem to be more and more capable of moving weather around.
Yeah, well, and I think that notion you just made, Rob, there's maybe some people out there who think that, um, well, the global narrative being that it's entirely because of carbon emissions. I think the point you just made that that's not necessarily we're not even necessarily saying that there might not be other things that are causing the effects of climate change and all the different types of pollutants and things that are destroying and wrecking the planet. There's all kinds of things happening out there, and we maybe in one of the ways we could say we're different too is we're not ignoring those issues. We're just kind of highlighting this one specifically and saying, "Hey, this is seems to be like a really big problem that's being ignored." And if you're an environmentalist, maybe like you should maybe consider this and maybe care about it because anytime the military is up to something where there's been pollutants involved or big projects, people come out of the woodwork and say, "Hey, this is wrong." So, what's the give here? Why is this any different? And I think there's a lot of political agendas, and maybe you could answer that question. But
Yeah, beautifully said. Well, maybe two final takeaways. The first is I heard PhD climate scientist William Happer, who I hope we're going to have on the show, say in a video a couple of years ago that Earth's environmental systems are so complex, Paul, that if we took every single variable and ran it through the fastest supercomputers we have as Team Human, it would take 55 years of the fastest supercomputers calculating variables to try and figure out what was causing the Earth to do this or that.
yeah,
So that's the first point, is that Earth is a beautifully complex set of systems beyond our comprehension. So to blame, one particular element or gas or phenomena for climate change is so reductive, right? The second thing, to your point about destroying the Earth, Earth is incredibly regenerative. So we humans get in our heads quite a bit about how we seem to be wrecking the planet, right? You may have heard this. And we have articles that we have at our OGA website about this. And let's remember how powerful nature is as a regenerative force. Every breath, every moment, every day, nature is in the process of healing. healing. So as we kind of get in our heads about geoengineering, let's remember that Earth is way more powerful and way more self-healing than we can possibly imagine.
Yeah, it's our nature to be so hubristic, right? To first of all think that we can control the weather, and then to secondly think that, oh my goodness, we're destroying everything. Look how powerful we are.
Yeah. And sorry, one last analogy. So last I checked, the world is burning 90 million barrels of oil every day.
Nice.
Biggest oil burning organization on Earth is the US military. So if we're really serious about reducing CO2 emissions in the name of catastrophic climate change, let's, as environmentalists, bringing it back around to the military projects in geoengineering, let's keep our eye on the ball, which is to say, it's these clandestine, these secretive military projects that are being run regardless of who's in the White House,
Oh
regardless of
yeah. Yeah.
that we really want to sort of highlight and begin to push back on in a really, hopefully, organized and consensual way across political lines and all of that.
Well, Rob, I think that is an excellent place to end the show because it does seem to me like we're really starting to do that. Again, just to say in the last few years how far we've come, just not just as an organization, OGA, but just nationally, the conversation being as big as it is, and it's very exciting. It's exciting to have you at Wise Traditions Weston A. Price National Conference, and of course, I'm headed to the Children's Health Defense National Conference. I think it's called the Moment of Truth in Austin, Texas. I'll be there. Looking forward to see some of the peeps there that are, kind of involved in this movement, this growing movement. So I'll be there. That's what is that, November 7th and through the 9th
Right.
in Austin, Texas. So that's exciting. And going into 2026, there's so many exciting things that I wish we could talk about, but we got to wait. We got to save it for another conversation. But what were you going to say, Rob? I'm sorry.
Well, thanks to all of our donors who made it possible, Paul, for you to go to Austin.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Thank you again. I know when the fundraiser it's almost done. When it's over, I have a plan as how I'm going to thank everybody
Oh,
that.
good,
Yeah, I'm
good.
I'm excited. Very thank you to everybody
Yeah.
that participated because man, it is always so cool to be supported in that way by people individually to like say, hey man, we want you to go do this. It's like thank you very much.
And we
So
do at OGA, to what you said a moment ago, OGA does have a few surprises under our hat for 2026. So we'll save them for now. But maybe we end with two beautiful forward phrases, looking up at this beautiful blue sky here. Number one, make clouds real again. And number two, make skies blue again.
I love it.
This is our work, Paul, and I'm so appreciative of you and so glad you're taking over the OGA podcast in the year ahead. And I can't wait to see where you go with it. It's going to be exciting.
Me too. I'm excited because now I know it's man, we can just do it just like this. Like I know we have an idea how to do it. So look forward to more, folks.